Right, so a lot of people out there would really love to be able to nail a handstand. You're talking about 1 minute 40 holds, being your best at the moment. A lot of people really would love to be able to just get that 10-second static handstand in the middle of the room, in the middle of the park. What do they need to do?
I think, well, first off, if you're completely new to it, it's very important to find a good teacher who can guide you along the process.
Yeah.
When I first started, I did it very much on my own, which meant that I built a lot of bad habits that I then had to unlearn later on, such as closed shoulder angle and lack of body tension and that sort of stuff. So find a person who knows what they're doing, and then pick their minds.
Yeah.
That's probably the most important thing I'd say.
Yeah. So someone who's like getting some handstand walks, they know how to kick to handstand, because a lot of people will have a background in this from CrossFit now, and they'll figure out a way, or they can get up on the wall. What's next? What can what are some of the things that helped you get from 1 second handstands to 10 seconds?
I think your best friend when learning a handstand, something that Yuval continuously said to me when he helped me.
Yeah, who's
is
this?
That Yuval Ayalon.
Yeah.
He's an Israeli hand balancer. He's really good. You should check him out. He said that the wall is your best friend when learning a handstand, which is something I completely agree with. Most people will try to either kick up freestanding and play around with it while not having the proper base or basic level of skill with it.
Yeah.
And so they learn a lot of bad habits. So I think just spending the necessary time against the wall, learning the correct body position, and developing the strength and also the balance using a wall is definitely the most important aspect of learning a handstand to begin with.
Yeah, for sure. And what about sort of the chest to wall versus sort of heels to wall?
Yeah, so of course both of them have their advantages, and and both of them will be used at different points when learning a handstand. But I definitely think for a beginner, the chest to wall is the best starting point, if you will, because it eliminates a lot of the bad habits that would normally occur. It forces you to a greater extent to have a good alignment and that sort of stuff. So it's more unforgiving, if you can say that.
Yeah.
So learning a chest to wall handstand is definitely an essential step along the way.
Yeah.
And where most people should be starting.
Yeah. And I often get questions about hands as well. How are we meant to be using the hands? Where should they, how should we be thinking about the hands during the handstand?
I remember Yuval, he always said to me that you should have your hands completely vertical on top of your shoulders. And I agree with that, but I also found that the width, exactly how wide or how narrow, is very individual. There are, of course, certain principles that you shouldn't go too wide or stuff like that. But I ultimately think in the beginning it's important to find a width that suits you.
Yeah.
That allows you to balance the most effectively.
Yeah.
Then as you get more proficient, you can always play with either increasing or decreasing the space between the hands.
Yeah.
It's about finding the shape or the position that suits you.
Yeah. And that's we were just talking. We were training yesterday in Butcher's Lab CrossFit gym in Copenhagen here, and there was a guy doing some handstands, and he was sort of asking, what do we need to, what should I work on? What's the biggest thing that are going to help me? Interesting perspective is that of a baby learning to stand, and that's something that I've been through recently. Recently becoming a father and seeing my little bub, figure out how to stand, and doing a lot of squats, going up and down, and building strength, I guess, is something that she spent a lot of time on. Naturally by instinct. Before she really stood for long periods, she would always squat up and down, grabbing onto something. So that strength base, I think, is something that people can neglect, especially if they're coming at this not necessarily from a CrossFit point of view, but more from like a yoga angle, or just an office worker who falls in love with Ido Portal or gymnastic bodies, but doesn't necessarily come from a bodybuilding or CrossFit background. I think that what my little bub Maya is teaching us is something that's important as well. How important do you think strength is in learning a handstand?
Oh, of course it's essential. You have to. I see it a lot of times that people, they want to learn a handstand without having the proper shoulder strength. And you can get away with it to begin with, but the problem with this is that you won't be able to spend the necessary time on your hands because you're going to fatigue too much, which means that the drills you're going to do and the exercises you have to learn, you won't be able to maintain the correct positions because you'll fatigue too early. And so this leads to the fact that you need to spend enough time on your hands, and strength has to be built for that. You have to be able to spend a minimum of time in order to get productive work done.
Yeah. Do you have like a benchmark in your classes where you're sort of aiming for people to be able to hold a certain period of time on the wall?
Generally we do a minute on the wall.
Yeah.
I think a minute is a nice sort of baseline to build towards.
Yeah. You should have enough strength then for a 10-second hold. Freestanding, the strength shouldn't be too much of an issue for.
At that point, it's more of a balance and an awareness type of issue that comes after that. Yeah.
The other big lesson I think from the baby for me is that she started with a wider base of support, so feet a bit wider and knees generally unlocked. And of course, the elite in handstands will always have quite a narrow hand position and elbows 100% locked. And you know when you go to a handstand workshop, it's all about finding that position. But seeing my daughter do that makes me question whether that's really a natural progression or whether we're trying to go to the most advanced position before we master what should be maybe a logical first position. I think, I've seen, your story comes up a lot, where people have taught themselves handstands to an extent. The alignment wasn't great. The hands were maybe too wide. The elbows were maybe a little bit bent or a little bit piked in the shoulder. Different people come up with different compensations. But ultimately, if you're getting time on the hands and you're getting the balance and you're in the game, I think to make those postural corrections of lengthening things out and getting that perfect alignment, getting that efficiency to be able to push 1 minute, 2 minute, freestanding static handstands, you have to get in the game, I think. And I feel like it may be holding back very beginners trying to adopt an advanced technique with perfectly straight elbows, hands quite narrow before they've even got, a 10-second hold. It's an interesting one. And my baby is teaching us that, there may be another way, but I guess it's something that will be, you can't really solve. It's a bit of an enigma because eventually, you know where you want to get to, but how you get there, I think, can be different. A lot of people have gone through your path. I think, Ido tells a story of going through a similar path. Yuri Marmerstein, who I did a workshop with in Sydney, told a similar story, mostly self-taught, and then and now he's doing one-arm handstands and touring the world doing handstands. So
it's definitely possible to learn the correct, if you can say that, and proper handstand. It's just a longer process because you have to unlearn some of the stuff that you built along the way. And don't get me wrong, I still pursue the standards that I think is a correct handstand should look like. But at least in the beginning phase of learning a handstand, it's very individual. Exactly how is your sweet spot with the balance and that stuff.
Yeah. And that's I guess.
Then you can always sort of refine it and perfect it afterwards. Yeah,
exactly. I think if you're too harsh on yourself that you can't actually get in the game, then it may hold you back and you may give up, which is ultimately, the worst thing. That brings us to a question like, how do you deal with something that seems impossible? How do you get your head around just methodically working towards it? A lot of things in gymnastics are 2, 3, 4 year journeys. How does your mind deal with that?
I think the way that my goal setting is probably one of the biggest factors for that, and also seeing what other people can achieve. So I have some long-term goals that I work towards, but then at the same time I also have very specific, like short-term goals, so that I make sure that I continuously see improvement. Because if you have a goal that's too far out in the future, it's very easy to get discouraged. So I think it's important to continuously set yourself small goals that you can then achieve on a consistent basis in like a couple of months from that perspective. That keeps me motivated much more than just having fuzzy goal of doing something crazy in 2 years' time.
Yeah. Do you share your goals with anyone?
Yeah, the gymnastic bodies community,
Yeah.
who I draw a lot of inspiration from.
Yeah.
Those guys help me along the journey, and I share my progress and my frustration
Yeah.
with those guys. I think it's important to have someone that you can sort of who can relate to where you are in your process, and who understands the struggles that you're in.
Yeah.
And so you can sort of support each other on the way. Because if you sit with all of the frustrations yourself, it can be a long process.
Yeah. Do you what do you what's one of your short-term goals that you're working towards at the moment, or that you've just achieved?
My short-term goal is what would that be? I have a 5 rep stalder press.
Yeah.
At the moment, I do 4 reps for 3 sets. So that's a goal that I'd like to tick off soon.
Yeah. So it's probably really close if you.
Yeah, it is. I think it's more of a mental thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, the point is that having short-term goals all the time to keep you honest and on track is extremely important.
100%.
Otherwise, you lose track of where you are.
Do the people who you're working with, who come into classes and those sorts of things, do you think they're as clear about their goals and their community? Are they also seeing where they need to go?
Yeah, some people are, but it's something that I continuously try to tell them, that it's very important not to get frustrated looking at the bigger picture, but always keep yourself grounded and see, okay, what's my progress on the past 2 months, for instance?
Yeah.
Because if you look at it on a day-to-day basis, it's extremely easy to get frustrated, because you always have a good and you have a bad day the next day.
Yeah.
So if you look at it over the course of a couple of months, you're almost certainly gonna say, okay, I've improved quite a bit.
Yeah.
Even though I'm frustrated today or something.
Yeah.
So
and even the periods of consolidating your skills, where you don't feel like you went forward, but it's just what you can do becomes a little bit more comfortable.
And even if you move backwards, which will happen at some point, then you still learn from that, and you can still use that in a positive way to guide you in the right direction. Yeah.
What's your take on it? You see it all on social media now, like people are posting cooler and cooler new stuff all the time. What does it sort of mean to you when you go through, your Instagram feed or checking out new stuff on YouTube? How does that influence your training, your mentality towards what you do?
I think my girlfriend would say that my Instagram and Facebook feed is filled with people doing weird stuff on their hands and doing all these crazy stuff. Yeah, which is true. It's a great motivation to see what other people can do. So I know that it is possible, and that helps me drive myself forward. I think just to see how are other people doing.
I think it would have been almost impossible to do what you're doing now, what people in the real movement community are doing in a pre-internet age. I think the fact that probably in Copenhagen, how many people would there be who are training at a similar level to yourself? I think it would be really difficult to sort of think, well, yeah, I've got to get, I'm going to keep progressing, and I think it almost seems impossible. It's like the 4-minute mile. Yeah, but I think if you didn't have that constant feedback from YouTube, from Instagram, I think it would seem impossible. I think the same thing's happening with CrossFit, where they see everybody from around the world what they're doing all the time, and because someone in Sydney's seen someone at San Francisco's done for a certain workout, that's just raising their mental expectation of what they should do. So people going into the CrossFit community now are expecting 100 kilo snatch within a year, where 10 years ago, before CrossFit was big, it was impossible to get a 100 kilo snatch, and you had to get a PhD in it, and you had to go to a weightlifting club, and now it's like a kind of a run-of-the-mill thing. The regionals have just been on in Australia. I think there were 2 or 3 guys who didn't snatch over 100 kilos out of the 40 guys. So, everyone's doing that. And they're also able to do a lot of other stuff. They're not weightlifters. But it's an interesting thought experiment to think, whether it would be possible for you to do what you're doing without that feedback and without seeing those people doing those amazing things.
And I think in that regard, it's extremely important that you find people who, as we talked about, you can associate with, and who are some people should be better than yourself. You should definitely pursue those people.
Yeah.
But you should have people around you who can help you push you forward and help you keep yourself accountable.
Yeah. It's so valuable. It's I started a community as a mentor. I working with rugby league players and getting some success there. I started to do seminars and enjoy that, and decided to create my own community. And I thought I was building the community to help other people, improve their performance and get that first-hand experience of what it's like to get strong and do those things. What I've actually seen is that it's been massive for my own performance, like my own lifting and gymnastics, mobility, everything's gone forward more than I could expect. And I think it's based on the fact that I've created a community of people who have a passion for the things that I have a passion for. I set it up for other people, but it's actually given a lot to me, as well as, seeing the other guys achieve their goals. But it's so powerful, and I guess it's sad that a lot of people don't necessarily have that, and I think it's such an important part of achieving the results that you want.
And I think I read a great book a while back. I think Outliers. That's the title of it.
Yeah, Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah, exactly. Which I think he has a lot of good points, but he argues that you're never a success on your own. You're always the product of the people you've met and the things you've experienced. So just making sure that you find the right people who can help you move forward, like I have with you, gymnastic bodies, Ido Portal, and all those different people. It's extremely important that you continuously try to seek the people who can help you. Yeah.
And I guess that's anyone, if you see someone on a pedestal and see them as being the ultimate guru, you probably should realize that, as Malcolm Gladwell is pointing out, they're the product of the environment they've put themselves in. So they've made great decisions about who they go and spend time with, where they go in the world, what their experiences are. That's built them into the person who they are, more so than them being God-gifted talent. I really don't believe in God-gifted talent to the extent that one person has a lot more than others. One of my favorite quotes is "Envy is ignorance" from Ralph Waldo Emerson, the essayist. And the point of that is that you shouldn't be envious of the position someone else is in, because if you make the decisions and create the environment, you can be whoever you want to be. And that's also what you guys are proving with the movement. Rather than being all like, wow, this guy can do a handstand, and just like putting him up as some kind of god. It's like, well, just don't be envious of it. Put yourself in the environment. Get the right tuition, get the experiences, create the community, and do it.
It's also important to remember that the people who are good at something, regardless of what it is, gymnastics or business or whatever it is, you often only see the end product of their success. You don't see all the hard work and the self-doubts that come along with it.
Correct.
You only see the success, you see the top of it.
Yeah, correct.
So it's important to remember that they went through the same process as you're likely to be going through.
I was reading your mastery book here with Einstein's story. Einstein getting terrible results, not just through primary school, but also through high school and through college. And he was at the bottom of his class, and then he changed the world by solving a problem, being a problem solver, and taking that solution to the world. It's like, if Einstein was considered an idiot, but definitely below average,
and there's no hope for the rest of us, right?
Well, but that shows that the value of other people's judgments of you are not that important. He chose to go his own path and follow that, and then that was what ultimately led him to being immortal, I guess. He's remembered will be remembered through the ages, because he chose his own path and didn't let other people's expectations of him decide what he would think of himself. If he believed everyone and just thought, well, I'm average, I may as well just get a boring job and not do anything with my life, then history would be different. I think that's important. How do you deal with being a bit of a different one, training at Butcher's Lab? It's a CrossFit gym. I was in there training with you yesterday. You can definitely see how you've influenced that gym a lot. There are a lot of guys poking around with movements that you don't see people poking around with in CrossFit gyms very often. But you are still the odd one out there. You're the only one doing press to handstands on the parallel bars and that sort of stuff. How do you deal with being the freak?
I think I've always been the freak, actually. All the way through primary school and high school and all that stuff. Yeah, I remember when I did parkour in my primary school years, that people would think of me as the monkey or that type of guy.
Yeah.
So I think I've gotten used to it in a way.
Yeah.
And I think the reason that it probably didn't affect me too much is that I always loved what I did, and I know that this is what makes me happy.
Yeah.
And so it never seemed to distract me from that. Yeah, and I think it's the same today, that I believe in what I do, and I like what I do, and I think that's regardless of what it is that you're good at, as long as you have a desire for what you do, then it's gonna affect people in a positive way.
Yeah.
If you can tell someone is sincere in what they do, it creates a positive synergetic effect on the people around you.
Yeah, it's really clear to see, training with you yesterday and learning some new stuff and getting some support. It's easy to see that you're super passionate about what you do, and that's why I bothered to make the flight over from Germany and spend some time here. And I'm just super grateful that you accepted me here and welcomed me with your beautiful girlfriend here and into your house. So it's been awesome. But it's the passion that you exude, and we met at the Gymnastic Bodies workshop in Sydney.
Yeah.
From then I sort of knew that it'd be cool to try and spend more time together and get some more training done, and someone I'd like to spend time with. And I'm pretty selective about where I spend my time. I want to spend time with people who are ahead of me, as you say, or people who are really keen to learn and to develop themselves. And into my community, we go like a long application kind of interview process, reasonably, because it's so important to spend time with the right kinds of people. So thanks for the chance, and
my pleasure.
It's been
we
really
learn from each other, right? That's the point of it.
Yeah, I guess there's always something to learn from everybody. So, but I've learned heaps already here. So it's been really cool.
Me too.
Changing pace, nutrition. What is the right nutrition for someone who trains body weight strength? What's your experience of food?
I can say what I eat. I'm not gonna be a prophet to say what everyone is to eat.
Yeah.
But I follow a predominantly Paleolithic, low carbohydrate type of diet.
Yeah.
I used to eat it in a conventional way for all my life, basically, until a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So I started to become more interested in what I read as an extension to the training, because I knew that they work together.
Yeah.
So I started reading books. I read a lot of different paleo, low carbohydrate type of books.
Yeah.
And I sort of got convinced that there must be another way of eating than we've been used to.
Correct.
So cutting out all the processed foods and bad stuff for us. So that's what I eat.
What did you notice when you first did it?
I noticed that one of the first things I noticed is that I got lean.
Yeah.
Not that I was overly fat, but
yeah,
I leaned out, and my energy levels were stable.
Yeah.
I didn't have those extreme sugar cravings or anything like that. But it's important to say also that I'm not religious with it. If I feel like having an ice cream or whatever it is, if we're at a social event, I'll enjoy myself and I'll have whatever I like. So I think it's important to have a balanced relationship with food. And not let it control you. Pretty much. Yeah. Cool. So have a healthy balance of eating in a good and responsible way, but also letting yourself enjoy life sometimes.
So what would be maybe a typical day for you?
A typical day would be, I always eat eggs in the morning.
Okay.
And then I would have
today we had them with amazing Danish pork, which is like really. It was really like the really thick, fat bacon. It was outstanding. Yeah,
a lot of fat. And then I would have probably some chicken, some rice, and then I would fry some vegetables in a pan and mix with some sour cream, make a dressing out of that.
Yeah.
I'm not a very good chef, so I'll use whatever I have in the fridge. But
you get some nice resources there.
Yeah.
It sounds like you guys are having some fun in the kitchen with your girlfriend.
We try to experiment a lot. We have like a rule of thumb that each week we have to try a new recipe. It doesn't have to be like extreme ingredients, but just to try to mix it up and keep things fun.
Yeah.
So it's mostly vegetables and lean meats and that sort of stuff that we eat. Greek yogurt we also have for breakfast sometimes.
Yep.
Yeah.
We also had an
It's very simple.
amazing pate. We should give that pate a mention because that was fantastic.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's from a friend of mine, Thomas Rode.
Yeah.
Yeah, Danish people will know who that is.
He's one of the leading paleo advocates in Denmark, and he gave Niels
some pate.
Yeah, pate from the Iberico. Pigs from Spain.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Oh yes.
Unbelievable. It was
a success.
It was a big container, and now it's just a smidgen in the corner.
Demolished.
Yeah. Outstanding.
So I think just like you're saying yourself, making a conscious choice of choosing real quality foods is gonna go a long way for most people.
Yeah.
So cutting out a lot of the processed food and focusing on getting good quality of whatever it is that they're eating.
Yeah.
That's gonna be a major step for most people, I think.
Yeah. And real food is one of the trademark lines of that movement and the books and that sort of thing as well.
Yeah.
Just to simplify it, if people are a bit intimidated by the concept of paleo and are we really meant to live like a caveman and those the kind of debate about whether they lived for 30 years or there's a lot of myths around sort of paleo, but if we come back to just eating real food and decreasing processed foods, then we're going to get 90% of the benefits. A lot of that debate stuff is within the last, the minutiae is where the diminishing returns start to come in anyway. So
I think it goes very much in hand with just, as with training and the other stuff we've talked about, being aware of the things you're doing and pursuing quality. Not settling for less and then trying to do the best you can in making good decisions for yourself.
100%. So the other side to Niels is your degree. You've just finished.
I'll finish in June actually.
Okay. Yeah, not too far away. What did you study?
I studied information management at the Copenhagen Business School. Yeah.
So this is one of the prestigious schools. It's kind of like Harvard or one of those kind of schools on a world scale.
It's a well-known school. Yeah.
Information. Let's talk about information. We live in the information age. What good is information to us?
Oh yeah, that's what I spent 3 years studying, right? I think information is there's a lot of information out there, and if you have a passion for something and you want to get better at something, you always have to seek out the people who have the information that you can use to help yourself forward.
Yeah.
But it's also important to keep a balance of not get trapped in the habit of always wanting to have more information. A concept we discussed often in school was that too much information can actually it can prevent you from applying stuff, because regardless of how much information you have, at a certain point you're gonna experience that things start to contradict, and it's not always black and white, and it stops you from applying the things so sometimes knowing less or having less information, provided that you use it, is actually more beneficial. So that, I've spent a lot of time trying to research stuff and better my understanding of things, but I've also recognized that it's important to apply the stuff and not always just trying to know more and more.
So how do we decide which is the information worth acting on?
So the way we used to talk about information and knowledge in school was that information is interpreted data, if you can say that, and knowledge, on the other hand, is information which has been experienced or acted on. So there's a big difference in that. You can have a lot of information about something and yet still be have little knowledge of the subject if you haven't applied the stuff. So I think it's important that as you pursue information, that you still you test it, and you see, does this work for me? How does this apply in my case? And then you go from there. So
if we apply that, your analogy around the bicycle, I think is really good for people who may be getting confused between, what are we talking about, information, knowledge? It sounds like babble. What's a way that people can get a picture of this in their minds?
So the example that we talked about earlier was that I guess most people have tried to ride a bike. So if you were to instruct someone on how to use a bike, like you have to push your right leg, and then as you come down with this leg, you push the other at the same time, you use your hands. It wouldn't make sense unless you've had the experience yourself of riding a bike. So it goes to show that, you know, it's important to still apply the stuff that you learn. Otherwise, it's not going to make sense to other people.
Yeah. So I think we see that a little bit with people who go from course to course. You could call them course whores. You know, people who are just
course whores. That was new.
always going to courses, but they're in the same condition and they have the same capacity every time they go to a course.
They soak up the information.
This is information overload, yeah, but it's not becoming knowledge because they're not able to apply it. They're not putting it into practice for themselves, let alone to be able to really teach it. I think teaching is then the extension of knowing it for yourself and fully experiencing it, and then you know, being able to go ahead with it is.
Yeah.
And this is the reason why I created a 12-month course, because I'm sick of seeing people go to weekend courses and it have zero impact on their future. You know, where I know that with a 12-month program that, you know, for the people who engage in the program that I'm doing, you know, they're seeing a massive transformation because it's long enough that they're associating with successful people from all over different parts. They're expected to reach really high movement standards, which put them in the top 1% of everyone in terms of people who are training, you know, in terms of mobility, gymnastics, weightlifting, powerlifting, you know, to be qualified, you know, through the course, they have to experience it. So I'm kind of forcing them to become knowledgeable, because otherwise, it can really be a waste of time. Of course, you can get the information at a course, apply it, and it can be life-changing. You know, there are life-changing weekends. I'm not saying that can't happen, but there are a lot of people who are missing the distinction that you're talking about there.
So it's important to realize what it is you're operating with. Are you just collecting more and more information, or are you putting it to use? Are you converting that into knowledge? It's something to be aware of, I think. For sure. The
thought experiment that your professor or teacher made you go through of instructing, you know, someone how to tie their shoelaces, this is probably a good way for people to illustrate if they want to say, well, yeah, maybe this is true, maybe it's not true.
So what we did was that we had a class, and so the teacher, he had us gather in a circle. So each student would be lined up next to each other, and then the teacher would be at the end of this circle. And so our job was to help him tie his shoe, basically. And so we were able to give one command each student before it was the other one's turn. And so one student might say, okay, grab your right lace with your right hand. And the next student might say, okay, grab the left lace with your left hand. And the third student would say, okay, cross them. And, you know, each person had a different way of tying his own shoe, which meant that it was impossible to get the job done because we each had our own different views on how do we do this, how do we coordinate stuff. So it just goes to show that, you know, we're all different. We have different experiences with us, and you know,
it's very hard to instruct a beginner to become an expert in something just through talking to them.
Yeah, they have to apply it. They have to apply it themselves and see how does this relate to me and where I am in the process. And that's why I often tell them that, you know, it's when you balance the handstand, it should feel like this and this and this. And then they'll come once they've done it and they've experienced it and say, oh, but I feel it in this way and not in the way you said. So it's an extremely individual thing, you know, and you have to experience how do I make sense of this.
Yeah, 100%. So what does that mean for you in terms of going forward now? You're just finishing your personal training qualification, and you're doing more and more teaching. Where do you see your development coming from?
So where I'm heading, or?
Yeah, where's your learning, where's your growth going to come from?
Yeah, definitely my biggest source of inspiration is from my friend and mentor, Christopher Sommer, and the Gymnastic Bodies community. I get a ton of inspiration and support from them, so I wouldn't be able to do what I do today without their help. So I hope to be able to continue pursuing training and movement, as that is what I'm passionate about.
So do you feel like your own development is still part of what's going to make you a an elite coach, if you see yourself, becoming a leader in the field, or the go-to guy in Copenhagen, at least for bodyweight strength training, like is your own training at the center of that, or what is it that will help you to do that?
I think I've thought a lot about what it is that I can offer, and I think what I offer is that the example of a regular guy who was able to enjoy success in something that people did not think that regular guys could. So yeah, just disproving the idea that especially gymnastics, but trying to compete with the idea that you have to be special in order to achieve something, that you can be an average guy, but if you set yourself up within the right environment and you have something you're passionate about, then you can go a long way.
Correct. Yeah, I think that's ultimately the experience that I'm trying to share with people as well. And gymnastics is one great way to do it because it's such a high skill as well as high strength endeavor. It's kind of scary a lot of the time. There's that potential to kind of fall on your head that makes people feel alive. But taking this mindset and mentality into everything in life, juggling, we've been working on your juggling, you're getting that going nice and smooth. Any kind of challenge, like that's one of the reasons why I love juggling as well, is because you can always take on a level that's going to put you back to being a beginner. So it might take you 5 minutes to add a new skill to your repertoire, but then the next skill puts you back to being a beginner again, and the balls keep hitting the floor. And it's a good analogy for life. Being an elite juggler isn't about how many times you throw the ball, it's how many times you pick them up off the floor.
Exactly right.
You have to keep picking them up off the floor, and you have to keep dealing with, well, that wasn't perfect, but the next one will be better. And
I think it's extremely important to have a good relationship with failing, because that it happens to everyone.
Yeah. How do you deal with that?
I fail all the time. So I think not being afraid of making mistakes is something that most people need to get used to. So when I do my handstands, I fall all the time. Or if I'm tired, I have a bad day or something like that. It's important to realize that those days are what you learn from, and it's a natural part of the process of getting better. You can't get better without making failures, so instead embrace them and enjoy it as part of the process, because it happens to everyone.
Yeah, 100%. And I guess that's
what you learn from.
Yeah. One of the other things that can be distorting and deceiving around social media is, people can obviously pick and choose which part of their experience of life that you get to see. So with some people, you never get to see an imperfect rep or a failure because they choose to present themselves on social media as a performance, where other people will choose to present themselves as an experience and a challenge.
I can relate to that. I do the same thing. I only post more often than not good poses or impressive things.
Yeah, and that's fine. I guess just for the viewer to understand that.
It's important to still know that
those people are missing reps.
They have bad days as well.
Yeah.
You don't see that. You only see the end product, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's misleading to many people, I think.
Yeah, but it's not their fault. It's in the perception that's the fault. If you think that, well, this person must never have got anything wrong and must have been born able to do a one-arm handstand. I guarantee you, there's no one who's born able to do a one-arm handstand. Everyone who does a one-arm handstand has spent hundreds, thousands of hours in handstands, and that's the only way, You did some work with a professional hand balancer. What was the time commitment they asked for from you in terms of your handstands?
I think I did, on average, 2.5 hours a day, excluding stretching and that sort of mobility stuff as well. So that it was a lot of time. But
so it's not by accident that these guys are becoming elite.
No, not at all. I mean, I played soccer for so many years. The last thing I thought I would be able to do was a handstand, probably. I had never imagined myself in that process. But just if you have the passion for something, then let that drive you forward. You may not know, exactly where you're gonna end up, but if you know this is the sort of the direction that I love, then pursue that and see where it ends.
Wrapping up, what's a typical training week for yourself? How are you getting this done to keep getting progression?
I think a big difference between how I approach my training previously and now is that now I approach it as work, or as work that I love, of course, but I set time aside for it. So I train 5 to 6 times a week.
Yeah.
Monday, Tuesday, and so on, all the way until Friday or Saturday. So I do strength every day.
Yeah.
Not always as intense, but I do strength every day, and I stretch every day, do mobility stuff. So the goals that I have, both short term and long term, are gonna dictate, where my training leads me. Yeah. So my strength training is probably 1.5 hours a day, and then I stretch half an hour each day probably.
Yeah. And talk to us a bit about what it's taken for you to become as mobile as you are now.
Consistency. That would be the most important message, I think. And you don't have to outperform yourself each day. I think a lot of people, they go into, especially gymnastics training, with the idea that you have to outperform yourself every day. And it sets yourself up for failure. I mean, putting in the consistent work, it's many people have said this before, but being consistent and making sure you get your things done at the end of the week is definitely the most important thing.
Yeah.
Because as we talked about, not everyone has good or bad days, but as long as you get in and you get your stuff done, then who cares if it's a bad day 2-3 days in a row, as long as you get it done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then you are at least moving in the right direction.
Yeah, that's something that all champions will have in common, that they're consistently putting in the training. There's no one who becomes a world champion or gets to the highest level without having that mentality. So
it's the same thing. So when my girlfriend, she would ask me, was it a good day? No, it was a shit day, I'll say sometimes.
Yeah.
But then I still get in the next day and I still get it done.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
not being negatively affected by that, not letting it
just
push away from your dream. Or
it's okay to be able to say, it was a shitty day, and then just shrugging it off. It was a day. A new day starts tomorrow.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, I think there's a lot of value there for people who want to get further with their bodyweight training. If you have got questions, the things that you'd like to, ask Niels or ask myself, feel free to comment below. And if you enjoyed this and you got something out of it, share it with your friends, help them to progress, help them to get their mindset right, to be able to make the most out of their training time and take things further. Ultimately, the reason why we do this, the reason why we're teaching, is because we want to see people have a richer experience of life. And by improving our physical performance, it opens up new possibilities in other aspects of life. It transfers over to relationships and business, and even what you do for the world. I know Niels is eating a lot of organic food now, and those kind of changes, they flow on, rather than having the self-destructive habits that the majority of society kind of take by default. Once you start really focusing on performance and developing yourself, these things flow on. So if this has helped you to go towards that, then that's a great thing. My main encouragement, the main goal with this is to help you guys to have a richer experience of life. So keep working towards whatever it is you want to do most, and don't let the doubting voice be the dominant voice, because everyone has that doubting voice, but you're definitely capable of so much more than you give yourself credit for. So, I started bodyweight training at 30. I'm definitely not anywhere near the world's best gymnast or handstand balancer or any of those sorts of things, but the rate of improvement that I've had and the amount of improvement that I've had has restored me and given me even more faith in the gifts that I have and the potential that I have to improve. And I know through my teaching that everybody else has that potential as well. There's no one who I come across who can't improve dramatically. Joanna, with her juggling, she doesn't feel like she ever really played ball sports, and she feels like she's really bad, but you can see clear improvement from the first minute to the 5th minute.
She enjoys it. That's the most important thing, right?
But some people will want to put the bullet down because they're worried about the embarrassment of not being, she can't juggle 4 balls like I'm juggling next to her. But that's okay, she's at a different stage in her journey, because she shouldn't be expected to when she hasn't really even spent much time playing ball sports. Okay, so don't compare yourself to people who've put in 10,000 hours of something that you've put an hour into and think that you're less worthy than they are. Put the time into what you value and the results will come. Learn from the experience of people who are getting great results, and great things will follow. So that's the moral of the story, and ultimately why we're sharing this stuff. So have a great training session today. Turn any of this information into knowledge, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.
Thanks, Niels.
Cheers.